With over 2,000 miles stretching across 14 states, the Appalachian Trail is a behemoth of a trail full of natural, cultural, and historical significance. We've had a taste of the variety of wilderness found on this trail, from the steep hills of the Smokies to the grasslands of Grayson Highlands to the jagged peaks of Katahdin. Today, we're exploring the rich, world-altering history found on the trail by visiting the psychological halfway point of the AT, a section that passes through a town whose events set in motion the U.S. Civil War and the emancipation of slaves. Join us on our hike through Harper's Ferry. On a bright spring morning, we awoke at a hotel in Maryland, just on the border of Virginia and West Virginia.
We were just east of the trail and the town we'd be hiking, the Appalachian Trail at Harper's Ferry.
And to prepare for our hike, we nourished ourselves with a hearty complimentary breakfast.
Hotel breakfasts are always so alluring, and I always regret eating them.
Bryan seems ready.
Ready to fall asleep again.
I have so much food on this trip. Peach crisp, good day, sunshine bowl, tuna.
There's no kibble in there, right?
No kibble.
After doing the last bits of gear organizing and preparation, we made our way out.
We had 2 cars with us, as our trail was a linear path, so we'd need 1 car at our endpoint and 1 at the trailhead.
Okay, first stop is the hotel, and then we are gonna all cram into this car, head to the trailhead.
It's you and me, Thomas.
So we're going to be respectful, we're going to have a good time.
As we drove, the new suburban developments gave way to green rolling hills.
The road wound through trees, at one point crossing over the Appalachian Trail before running alongside the Potomac River.
Eventually, we crossed the Potomac and found our way in West Virginia.
We entered the parking lot of the hotel where we'd be ending our hike, then piled into 1 car.
You driving?
Sure.
Now, we headed north, back into Maryland, where we eventually found our way to the trailhead at Fox's Gap.
Here, we saw a stone marking where Confederate General Samuel Garland died, and a bit further away was a monument to Union General Jesse L. Reno. Both died here during the Battle of South Mountain.
Nearby were signs with more information and a map.
These orders, somebody found them on a cigar or something?
Yeah, found by 3 federal soldiers in an abandoned campsite near Frederick, wrapped around 3 cigars. It's because of these orders, the Union soldiers knew where the Confederates were and ultimately led to the Battle of Antietam here. And you can see the maps preceding the Battle of Antietam. The battle was fought here, here, and here in 3 areas where the gaps were between those mountains. After the Union won those, they pushed the Confederates back to Sharpsburg, which is ultimately known as the Battle of Antietam, because of the creek there. As for our hike, from Fox Gap we'd head south, camping along the way and passing through Gathland State Park. From there, we'd continue, camping another night before hiking along the Potomac and through Harper's Ferry.
So that's north on the Appalachian Trail.
That's north on the Appalachian Trail, and you can see on that post right there.
Blaze on that telephone pole.
Yeah, the blaze is right there on the telephone pole. Yep, remember Katahdin? We were looking on those mountains, those rocks,
Oh yeah.
and the white blazes that we'd follow.
We hiked on, talking about sections of the AT we had hiked before.
So how much of the Appalachian Trail do you think we've done cumulatively?
Maybe less than 1%.
It's just crazy to think that this is all one continuous path. And we're just in this kind of not often talked about park that is much more historical rather than natural.
Where are most people on the Appalachian Trail at this point in the year?
Probably near Tennessee, North Carolina, maybe southern Virginia. We're probably ahead of them by about a month or so.
So now that we're getting into the more natural parts of the trail, I'm seeing some blueberry plants all over the trail, and you can just see the flowers starting to come in, but the berries themselves probably won't ripen until June or July. And then we also see a bunch of the azaleas starting to bloom, and plants in that family are really common on the Appalachian Trail. You know, you see all the rhododendrons and stuff that are super iconic of this part of the world.
It was a beautiful spring day, and we continued along a flat trail that meandered through the forest. Up ahead, the woods were bisected by power lines and an open meadow.
Oh man. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite things is the mixture of the outdoors plus civilization. You can actually hear the power lines crackling above us.
So one thing about little pockets of civilization like this is the flora just changes instantly. And I noticed some yarrow and some wild violets. And there's also all these, what looks like raspberry canes growing everywhere, thanks to the exposed sunlight.
And up ahead, we had a view of the distant towns.
So that's where Sharpsburg is. So on September 17th, 1862, you would have been seeing so much smoke over there, so much gunpowder. They could hear the cannons all the way out in DC from Antietam. It was that loud. It's kind of crazy. So much history was determined right there. Close to 11,000 people died. And I think it was over 20,000 were either missing, killed, or wounded.
How would you even go about life knowing that that was happening at the time? Maybe that's because it was kind of distanced from them because there was no mass communication.
What's wild is, in the first battle, the Battle of Manassas, so many people thought that the Civil War was going to be over in just a day that people brought out picnics and watched the battle.
What?
And there were a lot of casualties, and so all these people who were sitting there expecting to watch this battle just got their picnic stuff and was like, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. I got to get out of here. So they actually caused, I think, a traffic jam on one of the bridges that Union soldiers were trying to retreat on.
Back in the woods, flowers were in full bloom, leaves were unfurling, and spring was bustling all around us. So all along this trail, in this section, there's all these May apples growing, and we're catching a bunch of these plants right at the tail end of the spring ephemeral season where all the wildflowers popped up. In some of these May apples, you can see the fruit just starting to develop, so the flower's probably fallen off and been fertilized, and in the fall, that'll turn into a really delicious fruit. But there's also some other plants like false Solomon's seal and an edible plant called cutleaf toothwort, which is in the mustard family. Kind of tastes like wasabi when you eat it. And growing here is a little spice bush shrub. When you rub the leaves and smell it, it's got that kind of IPA Fruit Loop smell.
As someone who lives in Denver, Colorado, I'll be the judge of if it's an IPA. You know, I think that's somewhere between a hazy and a New England brown IPA.
So we have seen a couple of hikers so far, but it's certainly not crowded like last time we were on the AT. I imagine it gets much more crowded depending on the time of year.
I've always thought that one of my retirement plans is to buy a place along the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail and just sit in my backyard, make hot dogs for all the through hikers that come through. I'm like, hey, you want a hot dog?
I would hike on the AT just for that experience.
Along the trail, we saw a garter snake soaking up the sun. We also saw some wood sorrels and striped wintergreen growing nearby. Imagine how much of a relief this part of the trail must be if you're a AT through hiker. Flat, wide, easy.
It's probably over too soon. Like as fast as they hike, I probably just like blaze through this really quickly.
I wonder how many people eat an entire pizza in Harper's Ferry.
I'll eat an entire pizza on any day. This is the Rocky Run Shelter.
The sign for the shelter going this way is blue. There's blue blazes going that way, but the AT continues this way where all the white blazes are. So, shall we continue?
We shall.
I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
Well, it looks like that flat section is pretty thoroughly over, at least for now, because this is a pretty tough uphill.
That was very short-lived.
I definitely underestimated how hot it would be today. I was mostly thinking about tomorrow and the day after's weather.
With the sudden uphill, we decided to take a snack break. Robby's bag of food.
Hotel breakfast, last night's dinner. I gotta eat the burrito first because it'll go bad otherwise.
Man, this weather is actually pretty perfect. Like, it's a little warm, but it's not as warm as I was worried it would be. Feels like a nice 70 in the shade.
You know, I hear a lot about luxury items when you go camping. I gotta say, for me, it's a chair.
Yeah, you did bring yours.
I brought a chair this time.
I love a good chair.
Bryan goes, right as we were leaving, he's like, do you want to bring me a chair? And I go, I regret it every time I don't, so yes, I do.
After our break, we got back on the trail, which continued upward.
The ground here had splashes of rocky terrain characteristic of the coast. This is that classic East Coast rocky trail that we're used to.
Oh yeah,
Stuff that we saw all throughout New Hampshire, Maine, Adirondacks. You don't see this out in the West at all. You don't even see it in Ohio or the Midwest.
Now, the uphill trudge ended and we came to a paved road.
Wow.
I just think it's a beautiful day.
It's a really nice road, too.
Got a little bit of a breeze up here because we're on that ridge.
This almost feels like a bike track.
Yeah.
From the bike path, we returned to the trail, and Andrew spotted an edible plant.
Harper's Ferry was a stop on the Underground Railroad. It's not really clear if any part of the Appalachian Trail was ever part of that. You know, obviously it wasn't the AT back then, but while slaves were fleeing the South, they often hunted for wildlife, and I imagine they foraged a lot of plants to sustain themselves as well. And this one is called garlic mustard. It's an invasive plant that just grows all throughout the forest, and it's actually helpful to the forest to remove these. It has like a bitter, mustardy taste to it. It's a little harsh when you just eat it raw, but it's really not that bad. And with some salad dressing, it's delicious. Whether this plant was foraged on the Underground Railroad is hard to say, as it was introduced sometime in the 1800s, but the earliest record of it in North America wasn't until 1868, 3 years after the Civil War.
Either way, I also gave it a taste.
Yeah, the bitterness kind of like slowly creeps in. Yeah, not great, not great. I'm sure it could be spruced up a little bit.
Do a little one of this, a little that. You know, wash your produce here. Don't want to be eating anything unwashed. The bitter does sneak up on you.
Bryan in the background just looks so unamused.
You know what it tastes like? It's almost got that earthy truffleness. But don't get me wrong, that is not truffle.
Come on, that wasn't dry nothing. That's at least bitter nothing.
No, it wasn't dry nothing, but I chew it and I'm like, yeah, I'm just eating the leaf.
So another cool find, there's these little shrubs growing out of here, and these really shiny, tender leaves belong to the pawpaw tree. We're right at the perfect time where we catch these beautiful pawpaw flowers. They've got this really, really pretty maroon color, this elegant bell shape, and it's one of my favorite flowers.
All around us, the sublime sights and feelings of spring filled the air.
Are you getting your fill of spring goodness right now?
Oh, yes.
Or are we too late or too early in the season?
Well, some of the wildflowers we usually see, the flowers have gone, but it's definitely very springy still. I'm just trying to not talk about every single thing right now. Up ahead, we saw an incredible sight, a black rat snake on the hunt for food. Oh, whoa.
After that rare wildlife moment, the terrain got even easier on our feet. A welcome change, given the temperatures today.
Wow, right when we crested that part of the trail, it just got nice and flat and soft. No rocks, no uphill.
It's 83 degrees right now. The high is supposed to be 85 today. So this is pretty much as hot as it's gonna get, which is fairly warm right now.
I think that this is as high as we're gonna get, so it's either gonna be pretty steady or slowly downhill from here.
So just in the distance there, we can see what is probably the fire tower. Yeah, you think that's the fire tower or just an antenna?
I think that's the antenna. I think the fire tower is a little lower.
The antenna is right here, but not sure if there's a fire tower there too.
You mind if I leave my pack here, go check it out?
Yeah, you go check. Because it would be really great if we can go up a fire tower and look around. What do you see, Thomas?
Yeah, there's no tower. It's just kind of like a radio tower up there and nothing worth checking out.
Cool.
But up ahead was something worth checking out. The White Rocks Overlook.
This is a heck of a view. Wow.
Holy moly.
So you see this ridge? This is what we're going to be following for the next 2 nights or so until we get down to where the Potomac and the Shenandoah intersect, which is where Harper's Ferry is.
So like, we'll be coming in from this side and then going that way?
Yeah, the trail's going to loop back around. We're going to just ride the ridge. We might have to go down at one point where there's a gap, and that's where we're going to be camping tonight. And we'll have to go back up a little bit, but it's not going to be anything like we did today. So I don't think we're going to be flush with opportunities to see views like this along the trail. It's pretty tree covered, so let's soak it in while we can and look at the views and have a good time here.
Yeah, we're lucky too because some of these trees are bare and it's perfect time of year where it's not a super thick canopy.
Oh, that's true. You got gummies or no?
Maybe.
Thomas, I'm stealing a bunch of these gummies.
You can have some gummies, but you also have to pay the, no, it's not a choice, you have to. If you're gonna take some of my gummies, you have to have.
After Thomas forced us to eat his dry pretzels, we reflected on the view once more before heading out.
How great would it be to retire and live into one of these little gulches? You've got your community, you've got your resources, beautiful nature all around you. I don't know, it doesn't seem like the worst.
So far, this has been an amazing start to the hike, I would say.
Yeah.
And I would not mind taking a nap, but...
Oh, man.
I'll tell you what, if we get to the campsite tonight, I've got something I need.
We get to the campsite.
I've got something I need your help with, and I think it'd be great to take a nap under it.
That does sound good.
Oh, man. Okay, let's move so that we don't fall asleep.
Back on the trail, Robby asked me about a flowering tree. Oh, so that's a flowering dogwood. In the wintertime, this flaky bark is super distinct, and the branches are opposite branching, but this time of year, they've got these brilliant 4-petaled white flowers that are just super beautiful. A lot of people grow a variety of this tree in their yards ornamentally. We also saw Jack in the Pulpit, greater celandine, and flowering May apples.
Ahead was a sign pointing towards the Bear Spring Cabin.
So this was a cabin that you were thinking about at some point?
There's one that was just perfectly open to be rented, but then I saw you had to really kind of hike down a steep mountain, and then you had to hike back up. Sketchy cabin versus nice open tent site sounds good to me.
And so, we continued along the main trail, looking forward to our tent site.
Life flourished around us. Pawpaw flowers dangled above, while mayapple flowers lay hidden below. So there's a bunch of plants growing along the trail, lots of flashy wildflowers, including yellow corydalis, but there's also some plants that are a little subtler. This is wild yam. Right now it's just these desiccated seed pods on a little brown vine, but whenever you see these, you know that it's attached to a plant where there's a wild yam that you can eat growing. So some of the other plants we saw in this area include chickweed, purple dead nettle, sticky willy, which is an edible plant if you cook it, and Solomon seal. But you also have to be careful, it's not just wildflowers and edible stuff. Right on this sitting rock, there's all this poison ivy growing, because this is kind of a relatively open, sunny area, so I think it's just kind of taken over this whole place. Although, just next to it, there's also some Virginia creeper, which is a look-alike, but it has 5 leaves and is relatively harmless to most people.
While the others rested, I ran back to the White Rocks Overlook, as I realized I had left my chair there about a half-mile back.
Do you remember when I said earlier today that this is probably the hottest part of the day? No, right now is the hottest part of the day. I was running through the shade and I was like, wow, this wind I think is making me hotter.
Come join us.
Oh, I will. I've got my chair to do it. I would say my
minutes up.
energy level's at maybe like a 3 out of 10.
You want to sing you a shanty?
No, you know what I want is a carbonated cold drink.
Oh man,
Just like have a bandolier of cold drinks.
it's like a straw. You just change from one to the other.
Different flavors. Do you want a lemon lime or a hibiscus flower? Hibiscus flower.
You said we might pass by a place to get vending machines?
Well, tonight, yeah, there's like a visitor center that you have to walk down like a dirt road to. It's an extra walk.
I mean, we got to get there for water anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Time to go? Let's go.
Sure.
We continued on, hiking along a breezy ridgetop.
Has it actually gotten cooler, or is it just because I've stopped running?
I think it's because we're on a ledge here, and the wind is
Yeah,
now.
the wind's blowing right over us.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful, beautiful section.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the trails I live for.
As we hiked, we caught a whiff of something in the air.
Yeah, I definitely smell some food.
I feel like I've been smelling spaghetti this whole time though, but maybe I'm having a stroke.
What does it smell like?
I don't like kind of mushroomy.
Yeah.
Peppers.
Oh, peppers. Yeah, peppers.
So
Peppers.
spaghetti sauce.
My nose must be stuffed because I don't smell anything.
Brian's like, I smell dry nothing.
I guess the reason I've been tasting dry nothing every trip. My nose has just been so stuffed.
Up ahead, Andrew saw a plant that most people know about.
So do you know why it's called the dandelion?
Nope.
So in Latin, it's dandy as in dente, like the teeth of a lion. And the reason for that is the leaves have these sharp-looking lobes that look like the teeth of a lion. But dandelion obviously is something we all know about. It grows in all our lawns. It's a common, what we consider a weed, but it's really quite beautiful when it seeds. And all the parts of the plant are edible, and you can even make coffee or tea with the roots. We also saw a bloodroot plant and a blooming wild geranium. And here and there, we saw a beautiful patch of wood sorrels.
Though this section was relatively easy and beautiful, the trail really started to stretch on.
How you feeling, Thomas? You feel like you could keep hiking for hours more, or are you approaching your limit?
I could keep hiking, to be honest.
I don't know. For me, that rock does look mighty tempting.
We continued on, looking more and more forward to our campsite. To our left, we noticed a naturally occurring rock wall through the trees.
Okay, we're maybe another 5 minutes away, hopefully.
I just looked at the map and it just seems like we're so close, but
I'm gonna need to take a break if we're not gonna get there soon, but if we can get there soon, I'm gonna tough it out.
before long, we had come to the junction leading to our campsite.
I see a sign or something up ahead.
Got another quarter of a mile, I guess.
Just a little bit more. It's 0.3 miles down that way. Do you want to take a break or do you want to just go for it?
Just go for it.
Run and gun.
Thomas, you look like a cowboy today.
Hey, thank you. I'm a cowboy.
Whoa!
I feel like we gotta pick a litter. This looks great over here.
I'm fine doing it right here.
Right here looks great.
Yo, this is pretty great.
This is fantastic. Holy cow.
Wow. Now we settled into camp and rested.
In the meantime, Thomas had wandered off to explore the campsite.
So there's a bunch more campsites down that way, but I didn't see the shelter. I think you got to go a little further down to get to the shelter. And it just seemed too steep for me to go back down just to explore and come back. So let's have some dinner now, get some food in us, kind of relax, and then like a scouting party of two can go down and get the drinks while the others set up the tents and stuff. I've got, thanks to my friend for picking it up, some beef stroganoff.
While we boiled up some water for supper, we relaxed in the calm evening light and the cool shade of the forest.
So far, our trip had been your usual relaxing jaunt through the woods, but our campsite was situated just north of where we would see the first bits of history and civilization intertwining with nature.
But until then, it was time to prepare our meals and enjoy dinner.
You removed the desking, right?
No, I didn't. Oops. Oh, that's hot.
Just as Thomas's meal had finished cooking and before ours had begun, he started eating before the rest of us.
How are those?
Pretty good. There's some mushrooms in here.
Does it taste better because you didn't wait for us?
I feel like if anyone shouldn't condemn me for eating when he's hungry, it's Robby.
This is true. This is true. I'm going to do it anyway.
Packing food.
Do as I say, not as... So, what did you get? Because you got this from one of our viewers named Steve.
Yes, but this is a creamy chicken noodle dinner.
I have cheesy chicken and broccoli. Similar.
I did not measure the water, so hopefully it's not too watery.
Butternut plot.
Yeah, this is a tried and true classic.
Yeah.
And I got...
We know what you got. I'm just kidding.
I wanted to hear.
No, say it.
No, it's okay. The viewers know.
Oh, wow.
Is it ready? Okay.
Wow. This cheesy chicken and broccoli is what you want to get if you're super hungry, which I'm not. But if you were.
I think this
Do you think you're not hungry because of the pancakes and the,
Yeah.
and the muffin?
Man, getting to campsite really is good.
It's the best part of camping.
It is. Yes. You guys are slowly agreeing with me now.
My enjoyment of the campsite is like inversely proportional to the weight of my pack. No, it's directly proportional.
Yeah.
The higher my
and
pack
the
weight.
difficulty of the hike, yeah. Sometimes when I'm at home, I have this urge to want to like sleep outside, right? But there's something inherently and very different from just walking outside, setting up your tent, sleeping there, and then actually hiking and being tired when you get to that campsite. It's just not the same experience.
Now, Thomas and Andrew were headed down the trail to fill up on water and possibly find drinks from a vending machine, while Robby and I set up camp.
Well, I think we better test it out. Make sure everything's working.
I think that is a true statement.
I don't think we want to, we don't want to shirk our duties
Yeah.
and responsibilities, and then they come back and they're like, oh, the tents aren't ready. So we gotta, make sure everything's working. Oh my God. It's even better than I imagined.
Yes! It's pretty successful, but we might need to test it for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Just to make sure.
I think you're right. I better take my socks off too.
Yeah.
Just.
You need the correct experience.
Yes,
right?
yes. I gotta do it like it's the real thing, I'm not coming back out.
I read online that it was a visitor center or something down here where you could refill your water. I see the road, so I know we must be close. This is kind of what we were talking about before, where it's just like a little mixture of civilization and wilderness and everything. And I think it's good to sometimes go and hike in places that do have a good balance between them.
All things considered, that was not bad at all. That was relatively flat, actually. I don't think the uphill will be too terrible.
We're not going to show it just yet, but when we're just hiking here to pick up some water, a lot of cool stuff in the area that we'll get to see again tomorrow with the rest of the guys, so don't want to spoil everything for now.
We're heading this way tomorrow anyway, it looks like.
Yeah, there's the Appalachian Trail right there.
So there's the water spigot, but we're gonna look around and see if there's actually a vending machine. Somebody actually told us there was one, but we're not sure if that's actually true.
It's lost.
Oh.
That's okay. All right, you want to fill up on water?
Yeah, let's do it.
Take that.
Let's see how this tastes. It's cold, which is, yeah, it tastes good actually. But it's also cold, which is amazing.
That's great.
With that, we packed up the water and headed back.
Man, they really made quite the sacrifice.
I think we got the better end of the deal.
And I'm sitting in Thomas's chair. Oh man, we'll thank them profusely.
Yeah. They'll thank us profusely when they get to lay down in that setup tent that we tested.
Yeah, we
early.
won't tell them that it took like 20 seconds.
Who wants some cold water?
Your sacrifice was greatly appreciated.
It actually wasn't even that horrible. But
There's like a nice lawn down there that's manicured, and there's some other cool things that are down there that we just explored. We went looking for a vending machine.
Now reunited after a mutually hard and strenuous effort, it was time to try a unique little treat from AJ and Ruchi.
Pulse candy?
Oh, I'll try that.
Kacha with tangy twist.
Mango flavored candy.
Yeah, I'm down.
Oh, it's like green mango though. So it might be kind of sour. So I just know sometimes green mango in Indian food, they use it for like pickles sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
And it's very like, at least in the pickled version, it's very salty.
Actually, it looks a little bit like it could be a fruit.
It has an initial taste of like green.
Yeah.
It tastes like a hotel lobby smells when you walk in.
It's got kind of like a celery-ness. Now I'm getting like, you know the guavas we would eat, the green ones?
Yeah, now it just tastes like a normal candy.
Wow.
Oh, whoa. When I bit into it, there's like almost a curryness or some sort of like,
Oh, whoa.
you taste that?
Like a saltiness exploded.
It's like you're smelling curry while you're eating this or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you taste it.
That's the twist.
That part is definitely acquired.
Yeah, that was my reaction too.
It's weird, right? It's like kind of curry-esque. It actually tastes like the mango chutney I've had.
It's weird. Wow.
Very strange.
It's interesting though.
Yeah. It's not so weird that it's like repulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just takes you by surprise.
It was very surprising.
What a twist. Next, we prepared a chocolate cheesecake camping dessert sent to us by Dan Volkins.
Okay, the final step is to add these chocolate chip crumbles.
God, this does not look appealing one bit. But I am wrong.
That's really good.
It's like those pudding cups you would make as a kid with the dirt and the worms.
Oh, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Hot diggity dog.
That is decadent.
We got some cold water. Come on, son. Ding, 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 ding.
30 minutes ago or an hour ago, eating one of those would have been like, eh.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds
We
like
got another?
This is a good night, man. It's been a great trip so far. Now it was time to the shelters for the night. How are those tents, guys?
Excellent.
Excellent. The 5G service is particularly nice. I just noticed I actually only have 2 bars of LTE. I'm writing a bad review.
So I have always wanted to get good at setting up a tarp and go tarp camping. I really don't know anything about that. So I'm asking you, Andrew, to show me how to set up a tarp when it's 8 o'clock at night and we're pretty tired.
Yeah.
So
This is what's called a Scandinavian hitch, but you're gonna actually keep it like this.
okay.
Yeah, you're gonna wrap it like that, left hand down, rotate it up, reach through that loop. Watch this. So you did this and you just pulled this all the way
Yep.
through. Instead of pulling it all the way through, I'm gonna pull it through so it forms a knot, but part of it's still here.
Okay.
Put it over.
Over, just like this.
Yep. Pull it all the way back around, bring it over again. Kind of bring it here and,
Is that a knot?
well, feed this through again with another loop. By the way, if any of that knot instructional was unclear, we actually have an old knot tying video you can check out. But for now, we're gonna set the rest of this up.
Finally, after some finagling, we had ourselves a fantastic tarp setup.
Dude, this tarp is like
Look at all
so
this-
roomy.
Yeah,
This is like the 4-person tent equivalent of a tarp. I'm gonna have to get 12 by 12 tarp.
there's a lot of bugs in here, so I don't know how long we'll make the night.
Well, it's because all the lights are shining
Yeah.
right now. This will come in handy tomorrow, though. This is
Yeah.
gonna be great. All right. Good night.
but good night. Pound it.
The next day, we awoke at the break of dawn.
As we roused awake, the amber glow of the early morning sun sparkled through the leaves.
An American toad sat near our fire pit. Above us, a blue sky slowly revealed itself above the green canopy.
I prepared a bit of coffee as the others started packing up their gear.
Then, Andrew went to grab the food bags from the nearby bear hang. Now that we had our food bags, I was craving a hot beverage.
So I saw Thomas's coffee and I was pretty jealous. But I realized that the majority of coffee in the morning for me is the hot drink. So I'm just gonna boil some water.
You're just having boiled water?
Yeah, you want some?
No. I mean, it's definitely cooler today, but I don't know if it's boiled water.
Well, just some warm water, you know what I'm saying?
Some nice tepid water.
While Robby prepared his tepid water, we took down the tarp.
After that, I tried my water and we talked about how we slept last night.
So last night I forewent my air mat because it was warm enough that I was like, oh, I want extra cooling. So I just wanted to touch the bare ground, but I should have used the air mat because there were many rocks under it. Actually, it was, all things considered though, I slept pretty well. Like the ground wasn't too bad.
I slept super well. It was just, I was sweating at the same time that I was cold. It was weird.
Yeah. We're up pretty early though. It's like
7:24.
7:24? Okay.
Okay, so the rain is supposed to start at noon. And we were thinking it might be possible to get to this shelter before the rain starts.
I think at the very least, most of our hike can be rain-free, and then we can get a nice tarp set up. And
with rain in the forecast, we quickly packed up the rest of our gear. We were getting an uncharacteristically early start to our hike. On the way out, we checked out some of the nearby landmarks.
so the spring and the shelter are this way. We checked it out last night, but spring is just this dried up stream over here.
Oh, yeah.
Hole.
Now, we made our way to Gathland State Park, passing by more blooming flowers. We were technically taking a small side trail that ran parallel to the Appalachian Trail, so that we didn't have to do any backtracking to the main trail.
And in no time, we made it to the road.
There were some ruins nearby that we wanted to check out first.
So 1887 was well after the Civil War. I don't know if there was a battle here. There might have been. When the Union soldiers found out about those orders, they pushed through these hills, and there were only a handful of gaps because of the geography, so they had to go funnel through these gaps. This structure was the remnant of a barn owned by journalist George Alfred Townsend, otherwise known as Gath, built in 1887.
And nearby, a white blaze was painted on a fence post.
So that trail right there is the actual Appalachian Trail. We took a little side trail out, and you can see there's blazes on this tree down here and a random post over there. So this random grassy patch is actually the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It was fascinating seeing the Appalachian Trail weave through this manicured patch of grass.
Up ahead was another historical structure, a large stone arch.
There was a battle fought here, just like I was saying, where Confederate soldiers were here and Union soldiers ultimately pushed the Confederates back. One of the interesting things was the main reporter for the Lincoln assassination was doing a lot of research, and he came across the spot after the war, and he bought this. There's this memorial here for war correspondence, because he was a journalist.
That statue up there, there's a figure with a winged helmet, and that depicts Hermes, also called Mercury in Roman mythology, who was the messenger between the gods and the dead and the living.
So, this is what I was telling you earlier, Robby. We started the hike at Fox's Gap. We're now at Crampton's Gap. We're working our way down to Harper's Ferry down here. Lee split up his army and put some folks down here in Harper's Ferry. They had to hike 17 miles just to fight at the Battle of Antietam. How terrible would that be?
Horrible.
Wool clothes, 60-pound packs, carrying cannons and guns. George Townsend himself was a correspondent of the Civil War and began building an estate here in 1884, calling it Gapland.
Nearby was Gapland Lodge, built as servants' quarters in 1886, and Gapland Hall, an 11-room house built in 1885.
We filled up on water, and Andrew saw a notable tree.
So this is an American linden tree, also called a basswood tree. This one is really big, but sometimes you'll find branches of this tree and the bark is really pliable, so it's good for using as natural cordage and stuff. But the leaves are also edible when they're nice and young and tender, and you can see there's some here that are still kind of translucent, and these ones actually taste pretty good. They taste like edamame, so unlike a lot of the other plants we eat, they're not really bitter. They're kind of nice to eat. Make a great base for a salad. All right, so over here is a redbud tree, and it's just in full bloom right now. One thing I really love is how you'll just have clumps of flowers coming straight out of the trunk. So these flowers are edible. They're also visually eye candy, so I have a great urge to just go up to the trunk and bite a clump of flowers. But they kind of have a sweet pea kind of taste. So whenever you find grassy areas like this, there's just a wealth of edible plants. There's things like purple dead nettle, there's ground ivy, I'm seeing some gallium, aka cleavers or sticky willy. There's also chickweed. I'm also seeing some wild violets, dandelions, mock strawberries. One of the tastiest things you'll find is this, which is wild chives. And it kind of looks like grass, but it's a bit darker. The leaves are hollow. And of course, it tastes like chives. It's just like the kinds you find in the supermarket. Really fantastic addition to any meal that you cook. And it just tastes good on its own.
Now, we all used the bathrooms and sinks to freshen up while we could.
It was nice using that sink, right?
Yeah.
Just washing your hands after backpacking feels so good.
Dude, I washed my forearms too. I was like, I need to get more of this grime off of me.
We continued through the park following the AT and looking at other historical sites.
We made our way to a mausoleum that had been built here.
Was that his initials plus an H? George Alfred Townsend, G-A-T-H?
Oh.
Wow, cool.
So Gath had quite a bit of money when he was younger, and so he bought this land and built this tomb for himself, but later in his life he lost all his money, and so he was not able to afford to be buried here. So he was buried in a public cemetery.
Whoa.
That's why it says Goodnight Gath, but no one is buried in there.
Nearby were some flowers that you wouldn't typically find deeper in the woods.
So in this area, there's a couple interesting wildflowers. Down here, there's some periwinkles. Over here, we've got some honeysuckle flowers that are in bloom. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you can pull a piece out that has a little drop of honey on it, which is where it gets its name. But so there's these clusters of flowers here, and this is something called leatherleaf viburnum. A lot of these shrubs were known for their straight branches that could be used as arrows.
With that, we continued on the trail.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. We have 3.5 miles to get to the shelter, and we have 3 hours before it starts raining.
We were now back in the woods. To our left, periwinkles blanketed the forest floor, and to our right was another entrance to the mausoleum.
So we're kind of going through this tunnel of trees with these low-hanging branches, but a lot of these are hazel trees. And if I'm not mistaken, they're witch hazel, which has medicinal properties. It's actually used a lot today for skincare. We saw these flowers the other day. These are called pinkster flowers. There's a type of gall that grows on them called a pinkster apple, but I once read that these galls were actually edible, but I've never tried it myself. But down here, a friendly hiker pointed out that there's some lady slippers blooming. As you can see, this flower kind of looks like a slipper you would put your foot in, but this is a type of orchid. Right now you have this beautiful pink bloom. It's just so unique amid all this woodland.
We were now back in the wilderness. To our left was another natural wall of rock. When the opportunity presented itself, we decided to take a closer look at the rocks.
Here, we saw some of the homes of the eastern tent caterpillar.
Well, there's a bunch of bagworm things up here too.
On that one, you can already see some of the worms wriggling on top of it. Sometimes when the breeze goes by, it'll touch all of them and they'll all start wriggling like that one worm is.
We took in the sights of rocks around us, and nearby saw a stone placard left along the trail to memorialize Glenn Gavaney, a volunteer who maintained this section of the trail.
Up ahead, we came to a small clearing in the woods.
The little overlook on the left?
Oh. Yeah, it looks like there's a path going down here too or something. There's a fiber optic cable buried under here apparently.
Ah.
That must be what this clearing is for.
Yeah.
Breeze feels great though.
I feel like that's a sign.
That rain.
Yep. Yeah, you can feel the wind. The sky's a little ominous too.
We are 1.8 miles away.
The sunny skies from this morning had long since gone away, and it seemed like rain was just looming around the corner. We returned to the main trail, thankful that we didn't have too much left to hike.
As we hiked on, we continued monitoring our time and our distance from the campsite.
It's 10:20 right now, and we have just about a mile to go.
It's been helpful because this trail has been really nice and well maintained and wide and relatively flat.
It's been cool and breezy too.
Yeah.
If we get there before noon, that will be the first time we've ever gotten to camp before noon.
Usually we leave camp by noon.
And so, we continued hiking at a steady pace.
This section of the trail, there's just been tons of flowering pawpaw trees. I'm really curious if you would find a good amount of fruits if you walk this in September.
We saw some blue blazes marking a side path, and we investigated it in the hopes that it might be our campsite.
I do see some remnants of a campfire over here. Very subtle remnants. It's a little overlook, I guess.
We returned to the main trail, where the forest felt open, inviting, and fresh.
We are probably a minute away from the junction down to the shelter. We have arrived very early. We will very much avoid this rain.
Before long, we had arrived at the junction.
All right. The Edward B. Garvey shelter. The shelter here is supposed to be one of the coolest shelters along the whole Appalachian Trail.
It's not even a far hike.
Woo! Man, look at this.
Oh wow, look. You can see the ladder up there.
Wow, that paint looks new.
Yeah. Wow. The shelter is even like well varnished. Like, look at
I
this.
think we should sleep in the
Oh,
loft.
wow.
Yeah, I agree with a lot.
There's extra propane if anybody needs it. Bag of dryer lint too.
We put our gear down, then headed upstairs to inspect the loft.
Dude, this is awesome.
Oh man, this is really nice.
How is it up there?
It's pretty awesome.
It's supposed to be the 5-star resorts along the Appalachian Trail.
I would say this.
All right.
Is there a room down there?
Wow, this is awesome.
Wow, I can't believe there's a second floor. Is this actually the nicest one on the AT? I mean, who knows, but
It's gotta be one.
Yeah, it's got. You know, one thing is you'd feel really safe from bears up there. Whether or not you would actually be safe is another thing, but you would feel safe. There's a choke point at least.
Although the shelter was fantastic, I was dead set on using my new tarp to see how it fared in the rain.
We started setting up the tarp at a tent site, but it didn't take long before disagreements came up on how to set it up.
I say this side we could put down.
No, we should put this side down, if anything, because it's downhill.
Well, I mean, this will shed over here, and well, whatever. You can just take the middle ridgeline and make it these two trees, and just have a classic A-frame.
Whatever you want, I just think this is fine here if we stake this one down.
I'm just saying, if we want something that sheds rain, you need steepness to the structure.
And there is going to be steepness on this side.
Okay.
You gotta maybe figure out steepness on that side. It's fine.
Hold on. You know what? Let's do it my way, because
No.
I've tarp camped for 10 years.
But don't. Let me finish my thought, and then we can all critique my thought before it. And then you can poo-poo it once it's done.
I'm just gonna stay in the shelter.
I just don't understand, because the setup we had last night was so great. Right now, this is just going to pool all the rain, like, right around here.
It's gonna become a literal pool.
Yeah.
Remember my hammock incident from Wayne? The
Diamond.
minute water starts gathering in there, it's gonna just sink the slower and lower, and it's just
Yeah.
gonna keep pooling. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, I think I did a pretty good job setting up a tent for the first time myself.
Tarp.
You can throw your hat at him.
Technically, it's a tarpaulin. I mean, look, it's very aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. Okay, now we can do whatever you want.
Okay. Don't get me wrong. I've had some messed up looking tarp setups in the past. But if you are worried about rain, an important aspect is having steeper angles to shed that rain. Bryan's checking right now to see if there's a nicer area closer to the shelter.
Back at the shelter, I noticed a little map of the tent site. Then we assessed the potential tarp site.
I say let's use these trees, set up a nice area here in this open space that we can go to and hang out under there if we want.
Sure. And so we set up our tarp, making sure everything was taut, and using hiking poles to elevate the front end of it.
We're setting up a second tarp just to have a bunch of tarps, and is it completely unnecessary?
Yes.
Yes. Is it going to result in this tarp being wet tomorrow and heavier when I carry it? Yes.
But we're having fun,
Yeah.
and it's for educational purposes.
So I'm going to try doing the rock button method, because there's kind of this crease here, so I want you to take that rock, basically like push it up right here. So this is something you can do if you want to have an extra point. Your thing has all these loops, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to kind of use that to hoist it up a little higher.
That's cute.
With everything set up, we took some time to relax beneath the tarp as we waited for the rain.
So, Thomas,
Yes.
when the rain starts, what's your game plan? Are you staying under here, or?
I'm going to stay underneath here for as long as I feel comfortable.
Is that the rain?
Yeah.
The dark clouds?
That looks like it. What's that tarp over there for, you might ask? Don't know. Just like the idea. What should we do?
More clouds filled the sky. We kept talking as we sat under the tarp.
Well, one thing for sure is I don't want to jinx it, but we're over prepared for the rain between having an actual shelter and this tarp setup.
According to this radar, the major precipitation will probably be done by 5.
Well, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
It's not like Big Sur, though. I've never, in my whole life, experienced anything like Big Sur.
I might just take that tarp down. I don't really want to deal with it being wet for no reason. That's a good point. That was a waste of time. And just in time, the rain started falling, and we secured other hikers' gear under the shelter.
Our preparation finally worked out.
Okay, so they're gonna stay in the tarp. I'm gonna go up to the top of the shelter with Bryan. As soon as I heard the rain start coming down, I was like, nope. You guys can have fun in your tarp.
Yeah, I was like sitting up here and I heard the rain getting heavier and I was like, they're gonna regret that. You're gonna regret that.
As the rain fell, the forecast kept changing its mind on how long the storm would last.
All right, the rain has begun. It sounds heavier than it is right now, I think. It's 12:45.
Only 8 more hours to go.
I mean, this is a fantastic tarp right now.
Something I've always wanted to do is use my hiking poles, like something to elevate a tarp. And I think we did a pretty good job here.
Yeah, no, this is great.
You teaching me that tension line really changed everything, I think.
The others are up in the loft, which is also fun, but I just want to be in the open air.
I don't know, dude, yeah, especially if I've got to stay somewhere for 8 hours. I want to ride this out as long as I can.
We'll see who gives up and goes to the other shelter first.
Meanwhile, back in the penthouse loft,
See, the way I look at it is that if you don't use the shelter, it's an insult to all the people who volunteered to make the shelter and spent all this time and effort.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
The shelter needs to be appreciated.
And appreciate it, I am.
I certainly feel sheltered right now.
We were noticing this was kind of curling up and pulling the water earlier. We just dangle this on here. It might help with that. What time is it?
1 o'clock.
Yeah, that is already channeling all the...
Yeah, that's good. Good call.
Yeah.
After a while spent under the tarp, Robby woke up from his nap and joined us.
The rain was coming down heavily now, but from the security of the tarp, it was a peaceful, enjoyable experience.
The wind picked up as the rain started falling even heavier.
How are you guys feeling?
It's gotten a lot colder.
I'm gearing up for the coldness, I think, but still just kind of enjoying this.
Run back to the shelter. I feel like it's about to start for real.
Yeah, it's definitely picked up. There's like leaves all over this tarp right now too. It looks like it's a camo pattern tarp.
Yeah.
Man, this is kind of exhilarating.
Yeah, it is.
It is coming down hard now.
It's getting cold.
Yeah.
At this point, the rain seemed like an unending torrent.
Inside the shelter, we were checking the forecast to see how much longer we'd have to be holed up.
It's just showing rain through 5 p.m. and then not rain at 6 p.m., but probably there will be light rain.
Thomas and Andrew actually seem like they're doing okay. Seem relatively dry. I just poked my head out there. It was freezing. I was like, no, I'm standing here.
Yeah, if I had like thicker pants, I'd maybe consider it, but I'm okay.
Luckily, heavy rain generally doesn't last too long. An hour passed by and the rain had let up significantly. Hikers who had huddled under the shelter's awning emerged as we joined the others at the tarp.
How was it?
It was great. A little chilly, but it was fine. How was the shelter?
Oh, it's good. You guys down for a little boredom eating?
Oh, what do you have? You know I am.
Oh, do you have like any drinks, like coffees or?
Yeah, I got coffee, but it's kind of late for coffee, I think. I promise you, we will regret it.
Yeah, you're right.
You just dissolve a Belvita in hot water and drink.
Bryan joined us as we continued our boredom eating.
My hands are damp and I don't want to get them messy, so it's like eating some cereal. Want any cheese or beef sticks? Or some pure protein?
There you go.
Don't expect it to be incredibly delicious.
I can't believe how bad this smells. That's not me, right?
Yeah, there's like a fishiness to it. It's weird.
I'm not gonna eat. Ew.
Never know.
It's that protein powder.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are gross, dog.
Pure protein!
We had plenty of time to waste, but we weren't hungry enough for dinner, so we continued milling about.
That's the face of boredom right there.
How strong is your... Ooh, damn it.
Sorry, you alright?
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting a punch.
Andrew, you keep attacking people who aren't going to attack back.
Oh, you were asking how.
No, I was kind of asking for it.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how bored are you guys? I'm at a solid 8.5.
I mean, pre-adventure archives, I'd bring a book or something for times like this, and it's actually quite nice to do stuff like that. But we don't have anything like that. All I've got is these cashews.
Well, it's funny, we've got strong cell signal, but just playing on my phone sounds just as bad as being bored.
Yeah, I don't want to look at my phone right now. It's like a good boring, though, you know?
Usually, yeah, I usually do know. Today, not so much.
After some time had passed, we were feeling hungry enough to start preparing our dinner.
As our water boiled, it started drizzling yet again.
What are you guys having? I'm having lasagna.
I'm having the butternut doll.
Got the beefy chili mac from Steve.
And I'm going with raw pasta this time.
Is you really gonna do it?
Yeah.
With luck.
Glad I got this tried and true butternut. I was about to eat a string cheese, but I'm like, I can wait now. I'm not that bored.
It's like, that's true boredom eating. Because when you're eating string cheese, like 5 minutes before you're about to eat a meal.
Our water was boiled, so we prepared our meals while Thomas started boiling his pasta.
I'm really curious how that one will be.
Well, the lasagna is tried and true, so you know what
As
I'm
is
getting.
this, yeah.
Thomas over here looks like some sort of woodsman cooking in the outdoors, and you come up to him like, got a pot of stew.
He looks like a gold prospector.
All right, eating the beefy chili mac. All right, let's try this.
Okay. Salty?
It's good, but it is really, really salty.
It does smell good. It's got a really strong spice
Yeah.
smell.
Wow, those
Wow. Yeah. A bit too much salt.
Everything else is great though. Like, it actually tastes really good besides the saltiness.
Now, my pasta had finished boiling, so it was my turn to eat. Of the dinners that we've brought on the trail, this has not been the most extensive. It's also not been the easiest.
Thomas would be having green chili mac and cheese.
All right, moment of truth.
Oh, it's good.
Let's all have a bite. Give us 3 shells each.
I think I still prefer the beef stroganoff.
It's not bad. It's kind of got that like hatch green chili flavor to it.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was a hash green chili.
That's good. Good. Wow. That was a success.
So we've got 2 kind of desserty options. One's blueberry peach crisp. The other's good day sunshine bowl.
They're both from Bruce. Thanks, Bruce.
It's pretty good. I don't like warm fruit. I think that's the big thing. Like, I've never liked fruit pies except blueberry pie.
I love warm fruit. Like just under hot.
Yeah, that's a food I don't like, cherry pie. Warm and tart.
Oh my god, that's the best.
After dinner, the skies cleared up for good. We packed up our gear and took down the tarp so it wouldn't be in people's way.
Now, we headed to the shelter to get ready for bed.
Sleeping quarters. Bryan up top.
Yeah. That was it up there.
It's great. There's plenty of space.
I'll send you guys
That was our
The volunteers who worked on this shelter.
Like the work is being much appreciated. Like,
What a sacrifice.
yeah.
Why is this folded? Bryan, we're gonna fold it. Like this is. Yeah, I don't think you can have this.
What?
Here. We're gonna fold your chair.
Bryan's like the troll who lives in the attic.
You can fold my chair thee if you answer these questions 3. Bryan looks like the beast from Mullein Drive.
Andrew's out here looking like Fabio. Here, do a 360 for us.
Andrew, I figured out who you're.
Thomas, how mad would you be if I was just standing over your sleeping mat like this at 4 a.m.?
That looks really scary. Actually, it looks like your head's not attached to your body. So, Andrew, you're going up?
Yeah, it looks too fun. See you, sutters. See you, plebeians.
See ya.
Taking my water, too. Oh, you'll see me. Over the balcony. I think I made the right choice. I feel like a king up here. Let's look down at the peasants below us.
Good night, kings and queens. Us peasants will sleep down here.
This is the most well-maintained one we've been in. Usually, like, people carve their initials everywhere.
It's probably going to get pretty chilly tonight. Right now, it's actually quite warm.
The whole reason I chose the loft was because I felt like it might be the warmest location to sleep.
Yeah. It's more insulated and hot air rises, too.
Mm-hmm.
Night fell, and we saw lights from distant towns while listening to a hooting barred owl.
We awoke to a peaceful, beautiful sunny morning. Under the silence of the morning, we packed up our sleeping gear to prepare for the day.
Although today was the last day of our adventure, in a way, it felt like the journey was just beginning. We had a full day of all sorts of different sights and scenes ahead of us.
Outside, red-bellied woodpeckers trilled in the distance.
It was a cool morning, so I boiled up some water.
Got some hot water?
How'd you sleep, Tommy? Thomas.
Say Tommy? According to our bunkmate, we were snoring perfectly in line with each other. Like one would breathe in, the other would breathe out, until eventually we all kind of just at the same rate.
How was it up in the loft?
That was great. Warm, perfect conditions.
Could you hear me and Thomas snoring?
I just heard everyone snoring.
Yeah.
Thomas was snoring, and I was like, well, I
better try to get him to stop. I went like this, and he stopped for a little bit. And he started snorting, and I went like that again. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to really wake him up. I go.
See ya. Yeah.
Now, we hiked back onto the main trail and made our way towards Harper's Ferry.
I didn't realize this, but it seems like Harper's Ferry is kind of like the halfway point of the Appalachian Trail here.
Yeah, we were reading online, and it says that Harper's Ferry is the psychological halfway point. A lot of people were starting at Harper's Ferry, so.
I think if you want to beat the crowds, you start a little early on Harper's Ferry. That way you skip the wave of people who start in Georgia in March or so.
It was a stunningly beautiful morning, and as we hiked, Andrew spotted some plants to talk about.
So yesterday we were talking about these garlic mustard plants, which are invasive, so it's helpful to remove them from the forest. But there's also these versions of the plant which are younger and they haven't developed a stalk yet. And I've heard that these young tender leaves are actually much tastier, so let's do a little taste comparison. It's about the same in my book, I think. So this is a fun plant to find. This is doll's eyes, which is a type of baneberry. So later in the season, it'll create a stalk of flowers, which then turn into these white berries, where each one looks like a little eyeball, and it's a deadly poisonous plant, so don't eat it. So growing on this log are some false turkey tail mushrooms. The white margin and the orange color are a good way to tell, but if you're not sure, when you look on the underside, the surface is completely smooth. And then growing down here is a fern called sensitive fern. The fern is kind of unique because when you look at the leaves, they're all connected along the margin like that. So the other day I saw some brown little seed pods on a vine, and that was wild yam. And this plant growing from the ground is also wild yam, but just in a different stage of its life. But the thing that really strikes me is when you look at it from the top, the leaves are all radiating out from the middle, so they create this sort of star-shaped pattern. And sometimes you'll see stalks that have multiple layers of those leaves, and it just looks almost like a fake plant. And then over here we've got a little sassafras seedling. At first glance it doesn't look like much because these leaves haven't developed their lobes yet, but if you look closely, the inner ones have that distinct dinosaur footprint shape of it. And if you smell it, it's got a really nice Fruit Loopy smell, just like all those other scented plants I talk about.
Oh, it does smell like Fruit Loops, where it's got that kind of musty, fruity smell. Have you guys noticed how much cooler it is today? Like, I mean, it's obvious, but how much nicer it is to hike in this type of weather.
Oh yeah.
Cool, sunny, that's all it takes.
As we hiked, we saw a clearing just off the trail and talked about our thoughts so far.
I've talked about this before, but I love the sense of clarity and purpose that you have when you're hiking. Can you imagine if you're on the Appalachian Trail? Presumably, the only thing you need to be doing is hiking. And you can just focus on that every single day.
You're not answering emails, you're not checking texts, just where am I going to sleep and where am I going to get water?
Trail is suddenly dropping pretty steeply in elevation. Glad we're going down. Seems like we're getting closer at this point to ground level.
I think the river's going to be right over
wow.
there. Yeah, we are right there.
There's just going to be a lot of switchbacks, I think, in the next section.
Yeah.
Where we really descend.
As we're walking down, can't help but notice the highway sounds that are getting louder and louder.
Oh, what's happening here?
I think there's an overlook over here.
We found ourselves at Beaverton Cliffs, and even before seeing the view, we were filled with a great feeling.
I think it's partly just because of how well maintained the trail is and the openness with the pine trees, but it almost feels like we just walked into a city park or something. And obviously the closeness to the town, but this is really cool.
Man, look at this.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. Wow, dude, when you see stuff like this, it's amazing that it keeps surprising me.
Right? We've seen hills, but nothing like this river. This is the Potomac River right here.
was a stunning sight to be sure, but there was something else that made this view especially profound.
We've been to a lot of views, but something about this feels really different. And I think because you see some of the open meadows and the river so vast, it feels a lot more like, wow, we're actually gonna be exploring in there. Some views you just see it and it's a little intangible, but this time it's like I'm looking at where I'm trying to go, and it really gives you that sense of being a true explorer. From our vantage point on these rocky bluffs, we witnessed an incredible vista that gave us a taste of the rest of the journey to come. Beautiful nature, intertwined with civilization and history, experienced all together in a harmonious blend on the Appalachian Trail.
Just as the Appalachian Trail weaves from woodland to civilization, from meadows and mountains to roads and towns, history has woven itself in such a way that transformed these war-ridden valleys into a peaceful escape for hikers today. You know, I think there's this misconception that Western mountains, whether they're the Sierras or the Rockies, are so much more magnificent, but they're not. I mean, they're magnificent in their own way, but they're not more magnificent. They're just different. It's taken me a while to realize that, but it's so true now.
We think of this Western landscape as the gold standard of wilderness, but there's so much beauty and biodiversity out here. I mean, even without a view like that, I've been really enjoying this trip so far.
All right, down the hill.
Onward.
Do it.
Ah, there's a little offshoot of the trail here too. Looks like an unofficial campsite or something. The view isn't quite as good, but someone definitely had a fire over here.
Yep, yeah, nothing official, I think.
Man, I could sleep out another night in weather like this.
Yep.
Now, the trail descended down a series of steep switchbacks as we rapidly made our way down the hills.
With that rapid drop in elevation, I'm already noticing such a change in the environment. It feels, at least I think it feels way more dense and rainforesty almost, you know? But this is also the most pawpaw trees, let alone flowering pawpaw trees, that I've ever seen in an area. These are some big ones. This trunk is nice and girthy. I've found in the past that usually the trunk needs to be decently big, like this one over here, to actually have fruits being produced. So if I lived in these mountains, I would come here to look for the fruits. There's also lots of tulip poplar, so I'm in heaven right now. Here, we also saw a tiger moth, some spiderwort flowers in both pink and purple, and moonseed, a poisonous lookalike to wild grape.
So Thomas usually says hi to people on the trail, and he says it in a specific way, and he also has specific criteria.
If we're passing each other and we make eye contact, that's when I shout howdy at you. But we just went by two groups. Neither of them looked at me. I was like, they don't get a howdy.
Thomas's honor meter went down.
Their honor meter went down. I was looking straight into their eyeballs. They were not looking back at me.
They pressed the insult button instead of the greet button.
And suddenly, the trail came to a road.
Wow, this just came out of nowhere, I feel like. You know, one thing that makes this particularly cool is that it's not just some random trail in Ohio, it's the Appalachian Trail.
Whoa.
Look at this.
What?
Like if we were on the trail at Shawnee State Park, you know, it would still be cool, but when you look at these rocks, you're like, this is part of a national trail that stretches across the entire U.S. that thousands of
people have.
Yeah. These aren't just some random rocks. Yeah. This is not just some random curb. It's something thousands of people have traversed.
Yeah.
Dude, like even this, it
if I didn't know better, it would just feel like that trail in the Twin Valley Trail. This is something everyone who through hikes to Katahdin has walked by.
That is a huge part of the appeal of these long distance trails to me. Not that I'd ever do one, but going in and out of civilization, that is so interesting. It's like little bits of culture shock.
It like keeps you on your toes in a way. You're forced to not just walk mindlessly through the woods. It reminds you there's variety to life.
Wow, cool.
Up ahead, there was a small overlook in the woods just off the trail. From here, we could see some small cascades in Israel Creek, which fed into the Potomac.
We also bumped into some viewers who were just starting their through hike out of Harper's Ferry.
Yeah, so I'm Bob from Kentucky, and just leaving Harper's Ferry, we hit the Flip Flop Festival, which is a festival that's trying to get hikers to start in the middle of the trail instead of the mass bubble that starts at Springer Mountain. So there's probably around 40, give or take, hikers that started off this morning. Yeah, so we just started. I'm on my way to Maine, and then I'll shuttle back to Harper's Ferry, hopefully in July, and go southbound to Georgia.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. Hey,
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bob,
Thank
you so much, man.
We saw a dead standing trunk covered in wood ear fungus and reflected on the trail as we continued hiking.
Yeah, what you were saying, Robby, about that culture shock thing, when you're on the trail doing the AT, I know a lot of people enjoy that culture of all these hikers, with the same goal, same mindset. But then as you're hiking north or south on the trail and you come out to these towns, you get this little culture shock of, what that little town has. Especially as you move down the trail, it probably changes from town to town. It's probably a really interesting thing to experience.
From here, we passed a rocky bluff before the unassuming dirt trail made its way under Highway 340.
Do those count as white blazes?
Oh man, this is so cool.
Pretty crazy.
What is this? What is this for?
It's almost intimidating walking under this bridge. You have to really trust in the engineering. Like, look right here. You can see through the gaps.
You can see the shadow through this pipe as a car passed over.
Ooh, that was a big one.
I've been under bridges, but this is actually like really interesting looking.
Yeah, this whole platform here, I don't know what this is for.
Those look a little concerningly rusted.
We had hiked through fascinating sections of the trail like this before, but the fact that this was the AT made it that much more fascinating. To think that this modest trail passing under a bridge was connected to Grayson Highlands, the Smoky Mountains, and the peak of Mount Katahdin. It was hard to fathom.
The trail entered the woods again, where we saw a unique rocky gully.
Whoa!
Isn't that cool?
Besides the obvious civilization, can you guys sense the change in the forest too?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's like a very viney forest now.
Yeah. It's like very civilized feeling.
Why is that?
Well, I think less maintenance and also more sunlight and exposure to people. Seeds from non-native plants are spreading and stuff like that.
So I was just looking at the leaves of these and I was trying to see if I could determine what they were. I know this is hickory because the leaves are opposite. This one, the bark really stands out. It's got that weird, like, lumpy look. That I've always associated with hackberry.
Is it hackberry?
It is.
As we continued, I saw a couple more familiar plants.
So this is a plant that we don't often see in the wilderness, Japanese honeysuckle. So I'm not talking about the shrub itself, but this vine that's wrapped around it. And even though it's an invasive plant, it's one that I kind of like because sometimes if you find a nice vine, it'll have this bark that you can peel off and use as really good tinder. Right now, I mean, you can kind of see how this has a bit of a papery quality here. It takes a bit of work to get off and to harvest, but it's great tinder.
From the familiar feeling forest, we now emerged into an intersection and a small parking lot.
The blazes pointed us down the road, towards some railroad tracks.
And the trail must be over there. There's another blaze here.
Wow.
Now, the trail would lead us across the train tracks.
So the train we saw earlier came from that direction, and we were just up there.
I love that there's blazes on the back of that sign there. My fascination with stuff like that is just, it feels like this unofficial trail, you know? But it's very official.
Well, environments like this really makes you feel like you're exploring. Because like when you're on a trail, you're kind of just like on rails, even though we're still on rails, but when you see this and you're like, oh man, it's like a secret path.
Yeah.
We were now led to the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Trail, but we were taking a quick detour.
So the trail continues on this bike path, but we're taking a little offshoot to check out the river, see if there's a nice view of it.
And in this riparian environment, we saw a special tree.
So this giant tree is a sycamore tree. When you look up, you see the characteristic white bark. And these trees love to be around rivers, and if they're left alone, they tend to get really, really big.
Oh, this is looking like it's gonna be a good view.
Oh, wow.
This is the legendary Potomac River.
This is the river that flows right by Washington, D.C. The river that the Army of the Potomac was named after during the Civil War.
Now, we eagerly made our way to the riverbank to take in our beautiful surroundings.
The Potomac was an absolute picture of serenity, far removed from the strife that once tore across these lands and the injustices that caused them. Between the weather and the scenery, we were transported back to childhood days on family vacations.
One of the few touristy things I did as a kid with my family was we went to Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's
his home.
Yeah, and it was on the Potomac. So I've seen parts of this before, but never been right up next to it.
We definitely earned this view, that's for sure.
Anybody got some snacks?
No, I'm abstaining.
I've got some stuff here.
Probably another 3 miles or so.
Wow, 3 miles?
Yeah.
It's so weird. Usually when you get back to civilization, like, oh, our hike's almost done. This is just beginning.
Yeah.
For today, at least.
This whole hike has just been so interesting, like pace-wise and everything else.
It'll be a fast 3 miles because we're going to be on like a public paved road, I think, for a good portion of it.
This is like a perfect day in so many ways.
We were in no rush, so we spent some time relaxing on this perfectly sunny afternoon.
After a while, it was time to head back to the Appalachian Trail.
This kind of just feels like the bike trail back home, you know? Or just any bike trail in a town.
This is just a bike trail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just intersects with the Appalachian?
I know we keep saying this, but I love stuff like this. One, the fact that they utilized an existing bike path to connect different parts of the AT, but two, just that something so mundane is actually so special.
Yeah, you know, if you're somebody who just does this bike trail every day and you're local, you'll see people who are like halfway through the Appalachian Trail all the time, I'm sure.
From here, it was mostly a straight shot on a paved path before reaching the town, but we still had a decent ways to go.
And although we were well into civilization now, the bike trail still offered plenty of unique natural phenomena along the way.
Double helix tree.
What? Wow.
This is actually a good example showing that for a tree to stay alive, all it really needs are the roots intact and then the outermost layer. Because the outermost layer is where actually all the nutrients in the water are delivered. So as you can obviously see, the inside of this tree has been utterly annihilated, but there's still leaves growing up there.
And in case you're wondering, that's a box elder tree.
And we saw other plants, including these fleabane flowers.
So here we've got a bed of stinging nettles, which is a really fantastic plant. It's got these strong fibers that you can use to turn into rope, but it's also edible if you cook it. Obviously, you want to make sure it's properly cooked so all the stings are off. It's a harmless plant, but it can cause a lot of pain if you just brush up against them. and I felt a slight sting because it has these tiny needles that inject a chemical into your skin. And in a few minutes, we might see some bumps and welts appear on my forearm here. For those wondering, it feels the same way your mouth does after you eat something really spicy, but it's on my arm. This beautiful flower is called Dame's Rocket. It's in the mustard family, which, as many mustard plants have, it's got these 4-petal flowers, but you can eat these leaves and use them just like arugula. I think arugula is sometimes referred to as a type of rocket, but I put it on pizza before. It's pretty good.
As we hiked along the canal, we saw someone riding a penny farthing high wheel bike.
And in the canal, we noticed several turtles sitting just above the strangely green water.
Andrew, do you know what the green stuff in the water is?
So in this case, because I can see individual little leaves, I believe this is duckweed, which is actually not really harmful or anything. And in some cases can even be beneficial, but the canal is known for sometimes having algal blooms, in which case you'll see kind of a blue-green sheen on the water.
You guys want to filter some water?
We also heard the bright calls of a cardinal and saw a fungus growing on a tree.
There were all sorts of sights and sounds around us, many of which we hadn't seen until this section of the trail.
You know, the Appalachian Trail has to be pretty life-changing, considering we've done like a 15-mile section of it, and it's offered this much variety and interesting things to see. You do it for 2,000 miles. Like, how do you go back to regular life after that?
Good question. God, this is such a perfect spring day, too. Even for a bike trail, like if this weren't the AT, it would still be pretty unique.
Yeah.
Like, you got a river here, a huge river, a canal, a railroad, these beautiful rocky bluffs, and this like really narrow, vernal feeling pathway.
Man.
And now the sky's opening up and I'm like, what are we gonna see next?
So we were just noticing this tree growing straight out from between the logs at the side of this railroad, and it looks really cool.
Doesn't this look like the edge of a beautiful castle and this is the moat, you know?
Yeah. I don't know what that tree is exactly, but it's got that wabi-sabi look to it, you know?
I've never been to Japan, but based on the pictures and videos I've seen from your guys' trips, this feels very Japan.
It does.
As it turns out, this tree was a Paulownia tree, or princess tree.
So down on that log were 3 really big dryad saddles, also known as pheasantback mushrooms. They're super common in this time of the year, often growing in wet, kind of riparian areas. But they are edible. They have kind of a cucumbery or watermelon rind smell to them. But if you cook the tender parts, it's just like any other mushroom.
Buttercup flowers bloomed alongside the many signs of civilization.
As we continued on, we approached another looming sign of the civilized world.
If you couldn't hear and see the cars driving over, it almost feels like something out of post-apocalyptic.
Well, yeah, an abandoned bridge, all these vines and stuff.
We were now passing under another section of Highway 340, a tall, looming bridge with forest green steel beams that branched out of a solid trunk of concrete.
Between the scale of this structure and these suddenly ivy-covered trees, it feels like something out of an amusement park. It's like what Bryan said, it just feels like some set for a post-apocalyptic place.
Yeah.
But the scale of that bridge it's one of those things where your brain just has trouble fathoming it, which makes it all the more impressive.
Civilization's touch was definitely felt here. The trees we passed by were covered in all sorts of vining plants and shrubs, both native and invasive. Virginia creeper, multiflora rose, English ivy, and Japanese honeysuckle.
The bike path stretched on for a while. Here and there, we saw some interesting spots along the riverbank.
Yeah, there's a little campsite with a little fire pit and grill.
This really is kind of becoming the never-ending story here.
Yeah.
We saw a little bike path marker that said mile 59. That's mile 60.
That felt like 5 miles ago.
I was going to say the same.
Despite being easier to walk, the paved path was also harder on the feet. We took a moment to stop and rest at a spot with a view of the Potomac before heading on.
Up ahead, we saw an interesting landmark.
So right now we're passing by this stone brick wall called Lock 32. Locks and canals are the places where a vessel would go into it. They would lock it up and then raise the water level or lower it so that the boat could pass from one part of the canal to a lower or higher part.
It hardly seems big enough, but I guess ships may have been smaller, or maybe the canal was a little bit bigger before.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be bringing up sail barges or anything up here.
We saw some kayakers paddling down the Potomac as we continued making our way west.
And before long, we caught our first glimpse of Harper's Ferry peeking over the trees.
Both the stone canal walls and stony bluffs of the Maryland Heights were much more prominent as we neared the town.
And up ahead were a few more landmarks.
I see the footbridge up there. Look at the cliffside here. This is Maryland Heights right here.
It's funny to think that as soon as you pass under that bridge, this trail stops being the Appalachian Trail. Physically, there's no change, but psychologically, it's different.
You guys see this ruins of a bridge right here?
Oh yeah.
By the nature of the geography, where the Shenandoah and the Potomac merge together, naturally there's going to be so much significance from an economic and a trade standpoint throughout American history here. Because of that, we can expect to see a lot of interesting history here. So we actually started, I think, about right there. And interestingly, I feel like from here to here took as long as here to there.
It says this yellow trail is 184.5 miles of the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail System.
Yeah, there's DC.
You can go from DC all the way to
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Before crossing the river, we decided to take a detour and investigate some of the landmarks we saw, including this tunnel.
I wonder if this was used to somehow manipulate the way water flew.
Because this is part of the canal, right?
Yes, yeah. And it's very visibly like how you can see the canal walls right there and how thick it is, and then how narrow it gets up here. That's my best guess, is somehow this was used to manipulate the flow. Look at this, you can see that building there, and then as you work your way up, you can see an advertisement that was blasted onto the side of the mountain. Yeah, so I pulled up the website here, and it said, that ad up there originally said Menon's borated talcum toilet powder. I feel like I don't want the word toilet powder looming above my city.
So there's also these white marks on the rocks up there, and apparently the peregrine falcons will just roost on these rocks. I don't see any right now, but apparently there's a lot of them.
Now, we made our way up to the footbridge, which was built into an old railway bridge.
It's kind of scary.
I was gonna say my butt's clenching a little bit.
Yeah, the fact that you can see through it. Whoa, look how there's like pieces dangling off of that.
That looks like something out of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Like a warning.
While we were looking at the structure, a helpful volunteer explained what we were looking at.
This structure was when they used to have the glass on the telephone poles.
Oh.
From where they used to have the conductors or whatever they were called.
Right.
Oh, you see this one, you can see it how it's more formed, like still formed.
So where each of those nubs are is where a glass ball would be, I believe.
And to our left were more ruins in the river.
So that was the first railway bridge.
Well, that was one of the big reasons why the North won the war, was they had a robust rail system.
Yeah.
There was some in the South, but when General Sherman went through, he ripped up the train lines so that the South could not refuel themselves.
Huh.
We now entered Harper's Ferry and saw a sign marking the approximate halfway point of the AT.
It's pretty close. Give or take 150 miles.
A train rolled by as we admired an iconic view from the town. From this view, you can see 3 states, 2 rivers, and 1 national park. Over there is Maryland. Over here is Virginia, and then it turns to West Virginia, which is where we are now. Potomac turns into Shenandoah River down that way.
This used to be a focal point for the race to build a railroad in the US. And because of that, you got all these different trading, these different economic booms happening in this town. And naturally, it makes sense for you to build a military post, an arsenal, some place to garrison soldiers. And because of that, you needed to store some arms, some weapons here. And this is one of those arsenals.
This right here.
Yeah, this is an armory right here.
Before continuing on the Appalachian Trail, we decided to explore the town a bit.
This is an awesome alley, dude.
Have I mentioned lately how much I love an alley?
We continued up the stairs and through the narrow alleyways as we headed towards a restaurant for a rare mid-hike meal.
As we came to the street, we reflected on the interesting layout of this historic town. It's really interesting being a town where it predates cars and highways and stuff because you can see how compact the city is, and I think that's when you get all this cool architecture and all these winding alleys.
Look at that skinny building right there.
Yeah. There's some nice colonial fiddle music.
Now, we made our way to Rabbit Hole, a restaurant a short distance from the official Appalachian Trail.
We all got seated and eagerly looked at the menu as we took in the relaxed atmosphere around us.
Do you know what you're getting?
Not yet. My eyes just glaze over when I stare at this right now, so I need to actually read what's on it.
As we were looking over the menu, we were spotted by a viewer, Steven.
I'm not trying to nerd out. I saw you. I was like, no, I saw Bryan first. And I was like, is that Bryan? And then Thomas walked in. I was like, oh, it is. It was awesome. Very nice to meet you. Just give a shout out to Josh and Daniel, my cousin Jason.
I'm a loner hiker.
Very nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, you
Thanks,
too. You too.
Thanks, guys.
That's awesome.
Now, it was time to enjoy some refreshments before our meal. We had some delicious blueberry soda, as well as some beer, including this blonde ale. It tastes like a blonde.
Now, we tried the soda.
Yep, pretty good.
After that was a hard blueberry cider.
It's good. I like it. It's like a light carbonated wine. Wow, yeah. There were laughs all around as we chatted, shared jokes, and took in the scenery and ambiance around us.
From the patio, we saw a train rolling by. As it chugged along, our food came out.
We had a burger with bacon, a cheesesteak, a pulled pork sandwich, and some poutine topped with tri-tip steak. Want to give a shout out to my friend, Lydia. Lydia recommended this place. What do you guys think? Pretty big portions, right?
These fries look phenomenal.
I'm excited about this pickle.
Oh, that's a huge pickle. Wait, I have one too.
I don't have any pickles. I feel like this is a good appetizer.
I got the Philly cheesesteak. Oh, God, how do I even do this?
There's no fish and chips.
That is delicious.
That is a whole layer of bacon.
And this is definitely going to fall apart.
Very good.
We've finally done it. The mid-hike meal.
In a way, this is the true AT thru hiker experience.
Oh, yeah.
That, you eat a big meal, but you keep going.
Okay, vultures. Dig in.
My fries are really good. After dinner, we wandered around the streets a bit and made our way to an ice cream spot called Creamy Creations for dessert. What creamy creation are you guys hoping to get?
We put in our orders. I was getting the ice cream sundae.
Thought they would fill it up a little more, but to be honest, it probably is the proper serving for a person. And and I got a mango peach soft serve.
It is soft.
As for me, I had the chocolate shake, which was quite enjoyable.
No, up in the Rockies where I live.
After that, we headed to some of the historic landmarks found at Harper's Ferry.
So this obelisk is actually the original site of the armory, now known as John Brown's Fort. It traveled all around the world, including to Chicago, where they dismantled it and rebuilt it, but eventually came back about 150 feet away from the original spot.
It was this armory that was central to the events which set into motion world-changing history.
Harper's Ferry itself, not only is it like a confluence of these two rivers, it's a confluence of history. Looking over here, we see where Meriwether Lewis stopped right before he went and did his exploration campaign out west. Thomas Jefferson and his daughters would walk around and write about these streets here. So John Brown, he was a very eccentric man who he believed his purpose, his God-given duty, was to free the enslaved people of the South. And he got a famous reputation early in a conflict called Bloody Kansas. A couple years later, John Brown and his sons moved just north of here and conspired to take the armory that was here in the hopes that he could take the weapons, sail down the Potomac, and arm slaves as he went along. They were stopped. There was a big shootout here. Some of his sons were killed and some of his men were killed. But John Brown was ultimately hanged here.
Today, it's kind of framed as, is John Brown a martyr and a hero or a terrorist? When we judge the violence that John Brown enacted, we have to weigh that against the violence of the entire system that supported a system of slavery through violent means. And we also forget that when he did his raid on Harper's Ferry, it wasn't just him, but also, there were 5 black men whose freedom were at risk, right? And Harriet Tubman, the famous conductor of the Underground Railroad, even supported John Brown's cause by going around and organizing and raising funds for the raid on Harper's Ferry. And she herself was even planning to join that raid, but fell ill just before that. But because of that raid on Harper's Ferry, that spurred the whole Civil War. And it's like you were saying, these nexus events.
Yeah, whether it's back up in Antietam, where, the fate of the Union, where it was kind of decided and ultimately went towards the Union's favor, or finding the Special Orders 191, those lost orders that led McClellan to understand what Lee's commands were, to here, where there was the catalyst, the spark that lit the Civil War. This whole area is this crossroads of history.
We started out in the Appalachian Trail, hiking in the woods and the hills, and we end up in this really historical town with world-changing events. And Henry David Thoreau, who's my favorite nature writer, actually met John Brown in Concord, I think about 2 years before John Brown was hung. And just before John Brown was supposed to be executed, Thoreau wrote a plea for Captain John Brown, where he basically talked about everyone who was criticizing John Brown for being a fanatic or for being a crazy person. They didn't see the bigger picture. Thoreau, having explored nature and seen the contrast between that and society, comes to this conclusion of what side of history you need to stand on. And I think in a way it's good that John Brown is a divisive figure, because there's figures like Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, who everyone can say, yeah, these are American heroes. But the flip side of that is that they're kind of sanitized to the point where anyone who believes anything can say, oh, I stand with this person. Because John Brown is still divisive, ironically, the truth of his actions and what he was fighting for still lives on. And as the song goes, John Brown's body is a moldering in his grave, but his soul goes marching on.
Yeah.
It had been such a unique adventure, weaving between the wilderness and the patches of civilization nestled between the hills. Whether journeying through nature or through history, there are many life lessons we can take in from our surroundings. When it comes to standing against injustice and uncompromisingly fighting for the downtrodden and the oppressed, there are few better places to learn these lessons from than the story of old John Brown.
John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on.
So we're actually still on the Appalachian Trail as we're hiking this. And that staircase is called the Appalachian Trail staircase.
This entire town, and they make them go up the stairs.
Hallelujah, his soul goes goes marching on.
All along this trail, we saw more significant historical sites.
When they were building this town, it brought in an influx of Irish laborers. So they built this church as a place to celebrate Irish culture and religion. And then during the war, they flew a British Union Jack flag over it as a sign of neutrality so that the church remained relatively unscathed.
Stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. Stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. Stars above in heaven are looking kindly down on the grave of old John Brown. Glory, glory, hallelujah.
I don't often think of towns that feel this historical as being American, you know?
You don't get this type of history in all parts of America. Like this East Coast, it's a lot more history than where we're from.
He captured Harper's Ferry with his 19 men so true. He frightened old Virginia till she trembled through and through. They hanged him for a traitor, they themselves the traitor's crew. His soul goes marching on.
Our last major stop on this section of the trail was the view from Jefferson Rock.
This scene is worth a voyage across the Atlantic. This is how Thomas Jefferson described the view during a visit to Harper's Ferry in 1783.
We made our way to the rock to take in the view, just as the warm evening sun started sinking.
I love that all along this trail, even in this civilized town part, there's different landmarks worth checking out. I can imagine what it's like being an AT through hiker and just reflecting on the whole journey you've come, looking out there and seeing the journey that's left to go. And just, man, that is inspirational for anyone.
It was just 15 miles for us, but wow, what a trip for everyone.
Yeah, I really feel like we did get a small taste of what it would be like to be on the AT just by doing this. After doing it, I really appreciate the satisfaction people can get out of doing the AT. We've had the sampler, but we've yet to have the buffet.
Some parts of the AT we've been on have been amazing. Others, it's just like you're going up and down hills through the woods. But I think this, better than any other part, really encapsulates that feeling of a true journey.
We took one last moment to appreciate the view behind us, reflecting on the adventure that we had just had, before embarking on our final hike out and bringing an end to our long, wonderful journey through Harper's Ferry.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul goes marching on. His soul goes marching on.
Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, one of the best ways you can help out the channel is by hitting the like button or using one of the affiliate links for all the different backpacking gear we use in the videos in the description below. And if you really like the videos, you can go to patreon.com/adventure. You can get early access to the videos, bloopers, commentaries, and live streams. And at some of the higher tiers, you can get your name in the credits, copies of the soundtrack, or even one of the special shoutouts that we put at the end of the episodes. If you want to listen to any of the original music that we write for the episodes, you can go to adventurearchives.bandcamp.com. Finally, we have t-shirts for sale, which you can buy at bit.ly/adventure shirts. Thank you very much once again for watching the video. We'll see you in the next one.
This is the first time we've done a post-meal hike.
To be honest with you, I don't recommend it. Eating after the hiking is definitely better.
We got some more landmarks. Whoa!
Wow.
Woo! The beauty does not stop.
No. Huh. It's like a different world.
Man, all these people really lived. Any Pokestops? Did you get any rare Pokemon this trip?
No.
Just think, if we were doing southbound, we wouldn't be going to a hotel right now. Well, I guess you could go to a hotel, but this wouldn't be the end of our trip. This would be halfway there.
And we wouldn't be exhausted from having hiked 15 miles. We would be exhausted from having hiked 1,059 or whatever.
I'll tell you one thing, I am very excited.
There's a tree right here with these seed pods. It's called a Kentucky coffee tree. Kind of smells chocolatey-esque. But actually, these grow in the suburbs in Columbus.
Oh, that's the visitor center for the Appalachian Trail. Oh, it is, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah, the AT would actually circle around here. You can see the blazes up there and it goes onto that bridge back across the river and into those hills. This is where we part ways with the AT.
That is exciting.
Hiking directly to your hotel? Come on, man.
No need to sit in a car.
Woo!
Oh man, this is what I live for. It's good times.
That was a way more eventful trip than I would have ever expected.
Yeah. Today feels like an entire journey on its own.
Yeah, we did so much today. We started so early too.
Yeah. We lived a full life in a single day. Yo, have you ever been this happy?
Oh man, perfection. I saw there was a vending machine in there. I was like,
Oh baby, oh baby.
That's what I call quality.
So we're showering in order of hair length. Thomas went first, then me, then Bryan.
And Andrew, show us why you're last. Holy.
Why does my hair smell so nice?
So, it is down to you, Douglas Jackson. It is down to me, Charlie Joe. I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
You're that smart.
Let me put it this way. You ever heard of Aristotle, Dan Vulcans, Brian Kitsune, Plato? Morons.
Really? In that case, I challenge you to a battle of wits.
For Princess Sarah Kitsune? To the death? I accept.
This is iocane powder. It's odorless, tasteless, dissolves instantly in liquid, and is one of the deadlier poisons known to man. All right, where is the poison? The battle of wits has begun. It ends when you decide and we both drink. And we find out who is right and who is dead.
It's so simple. All I have to do is divine from what I know of you. Are you the sort of man who would put the poison into his own goblet or his enemies? Now, a clever man would put the poison into his own goblet because he knows that only a great fool would reach for what he is given. I am not a great fool, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you must have known I was not a great fool. You would have counted on it, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You've made your decision then?
Not remotely. Because iocane comes from Australia, and Australia is a country entirely peopled with criminals. And criminals are used to having people not trust them, as you are not trusted by me. So I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Wait till I get going. Where was I?
Australia.
Yes, Australia. And you must have suspected I would know the powder's origin, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You're just stalling now.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? You've beaten Morgan Ariel Weinrich, which means that you're exceptionally strong. So you could have put the poison in your own goblet and relied on your strength to save you, which means I clearly cannot choose the wine in front of you. But you've also bested Bryan and Katia Strom, which means that you've studied. And in studying, you would have learned that man is mortal, so you would have put the poison as far from yourself as possible, which means I clearly cannot choose the wine in front of me.
You're trying to trick me into giving something away. It won't work.
It's worked! You've given away everything. I know where the poison is.
Then make your choice.
I will. And I choose... What in the world could that be?
What? Where? I don't see anything.
Oh, well, I could have sworn I saw something. No matter.
What's so funny?
I'll tell you in a minute. First, let's drink. Me from my glass, and you from yours.
You guessed wrong.
You only think I guessed wrong. That's what's so funny. I switched the glasses when your back was turned. You fool.
Bryan Keatsonet would also like to give a shout out to Sarah. Congratulations on your first year as a middle school teacher and only being slightly less sane than before.
Morgan would also like to say happy anniversary and happy Father's Day to Neil. You are an amazing, loving dad and partner, and she loves growing and journeying together. Here's to many more adventures and explorations.
Ricky, I can't believe you lost Jason Bourgeois' cat.
Julian, I just let it out the door one time to use the bathroom and I can't even find it. I'm sure we'll find it though. Wait a minute. Isn't that his cat right there?
No, that's Mary Sincavige's cat. Jason's cat is black and white.
Well, it looks 6.5 and 2 of a dozen to me. Julian, why don't we just steal that cat? We can paint it white and then we can give it back to Jason Bourgeois and then he'll be off our case.
Ricky, we can't do that. Mary Sincavige is a nice lady.
I don't really get why Julian's being so strict about this. I mean, all cats kind of look the same. They're not like dogs. They actually look the same. But the way he's being so strict, it's like you'd think we were living in West Korea instead of in Canada. Wait, Julian, I think I found it. It just escaped from this trap here. Jason Bourgeois would also like to say, happy birthday, Carrie Larson. Love, Jason Bourgeois. Also, Ren and Yvette want to give a shout out to their friends and family.
I'll give a shout out to Sanwar One, Expedition Research LLC, and Jasper Caps.
Battle and Holly wants to give a shout out to Tommy. Only 5 more months until you welcome your new adventure baby. Thank you for all your support.
Ah, Link, it's good to see you doing well. I am the sage James Rokitsky, and I have an urgent mission for you. Princess Christina Alvarez has disappeared and we have not been able to locate her since the upheaval. We need you to go rescue her. You must also go to the 4 corners of Hyrule and find the champions, Leon and Lu Lin, and Ren and Yvette. They will assist you on this journey. I suggest starting your search at Jake Buer Village. You might be able to ask around there and find someone who can help you. That right arm of yours contains the technology of the Sunjan Huang tribe from many years ago. Use the power of Ultra Hand to fuse objects together and create the necessary tools you need to complete your journey. Hey! Ah, greetings, traveler. I see you're also heading to Jake Buer Village. My name is Gavin Ryan. I'm heading there to meet the researcher, Sue and Ton. Is that what you're doing? Ah, yes. Those researchers are very renowned in ancient technology. I'm sure they'll have something that can help you. Ah, Link, I've been expecting you. Welcome to the Sue and Ton Laboratory. I'm Ton. Now, I don't want to keep you here too long, but before you go on your next journey, I want to give you something. It's made from GreatLakesWatercraft.com ancient technology. But you'll need one more thing on your journey in order to defeat evil. You'll need to head to the Salvador Gonzalez Forest and speak to the Great TS Tree. Link, I am the Great TS Tree. Before you can complete your journey and defeat the evil Gerudo King, you need one more item. This is the Master Sword, the bane of all evil, and the blade that will finally be able to defeat evil King Ganondorf. Take this blade and strike down darkness once and for all. Use the power of Ultra Hand to fuse objects together.
John Truitt wants to give a shout out to Jackson and Hannah Trigg and their children Zoe and Nigel. Thanks, John.
This plant right here is one of my favorites.
No,
it's called...
the episode's over. No more identifying.
It's called Mullein.